My name is Sienna Myers. I am 34 years old, and for 12 years I have made a living finding the detail people forget when they lie. A receipt folded twice, a time stamped that does not match, a voice that grows softer around one particular name. So when my sister-in-law slipped my credit card from my purse at 3 in the morning while I slept upstairs, she did not choose an easy victim. She chose a woman who documents everything. By sunrise, exactly $9,000 had disappeared. There were 3 airline tickets to Orlando, a hotel reservation near the theme parks, 2 new phones, a tablet, children's clothes, luggage, and a pair of white sneakers Dana had admired online the week before. Every purchase had been made between 2:47 and 4:12 a.m. Every confirmation carried her name, her phone number, or the names of her children. When I confronted her in my kitchen, she smiled and called it identity theft. When my father-in-law arrived, he did not ask to see the evidence. He looked at me across my own table and said, "Dana would never steal from family." I remember smiling then, not because anything was funny, but because the card she had taken was not my personal card. It belonged to the Dayton Herald. By touching it, Dana had not created a private argument that Frank Caldwell could bury under Sunday dinner and prayer. She had started a process controlled by a newspaper, a bank, and people who did not care how many Bible verses her father could quote. 5 weeks later, Frank placed a $9,000 cashier's check beside my plate, seated a pastor at the head of the table, and offered me the one thing I had wanted since marrying his son: a real place in the family. All I had to do was sign a lie. What happened after I uncapped my father's fountain pen ended Sunday dinners, exposed a secret Nathan had carried since childhood, and forced Dana to face the first consequence her father could not purchase away. But the story did not begin with $9,000. It began with 60. 8 months before the theft, I married Nathan Caldwell in a small brick church outside Dayton. Nathan was 36, broad-shouldered, patient, and unusually skilled at noticing a room before speaking inside it. I had once mistaken that quality for confidence. Later, I understood it as survival. Nathan repaired commercial heating systems. He could listen to a furnace for 20 seconds and tell you which part was failing. He approached people the same way. He heard strain before anyone else noticed the noise. He knew when his father was disappointed, when his sister was about to ask for money, and when a harmless conversation was one sentence away from becoming dangerous. We bought our first house that spring, a modest 2-story place on Dayton's east side. I paid half the down payment from savings, and Nathan rebuilt the kitchen cabinets himself. On closing day, we ate pizza on the empty living room floor. "This is ours," he said. I believed that meant no one could rearrange our lives without permission. Nathan's family operated differently. Every Sunday at 6, we ate at Frank Caldwell's house. He was 66, a retired mechanic and church deacon who spoke like a man accustomed to obedience. His wife, Margaret, had died 4 years earlier, and her chair remained empty. Frank sat at one end, Dana beside him, Nathan across from her. My seat was by the serving trays. For months, I told myself the arrangement meant nothing. I was new, they were grieving, families took time. Then I noticed that even Kyle and Tessa had permanent seats. I did not. Dana was Nathan's older sister, 38, divorced, and mother to 12-year-old Kyle and 9-year-old Tessa. She was beautiful in the careless way of someone who expected other people to finish whatever she left incomplete. She could enter a room complaining and somehow leave carrying someone else's sympathy, groceries, or cash. In September, Dana lost her apartment. Nathan told me on a Tuesday evening while drying the same plate for nearly a minute. Dana had been out of work since spring. Her former husband was behind on support. The landlord had posted an eviction notice. She and the children had nowhere safe to go. 6 weeks, Nathan said, maybe 8, just until she gets steady. He watched my face so carefully that I understood my answer had already become a test. I said yes because Kyle went silent whenever adults discussed rent, and because Tessa hugged a one-eared stuffed rabbit and asked whether our guest room had a nightlight. Dana moved into the guest room that Friday. Kyle and Tessa slept in the den. Suitcases lined the hallway, shoes multiplied by the door, and the refrigerator emptied twice as fast. I told myself this was what family looked like up close. During the second week, $60 vanished from a ceramic bowl beside the front door. The money had been folded beneath 2 receipts and a spare key. I knew the amount because I had withdrawn it for a retirement lunch at work. When I asked Nathan whether he had taken it, he said no. When I asked Dana, she widened her eyes and suggested Kyle might have moved it. Kyle heard her from the hallway. His face changed. That was the first moment I felt something colder than irritation. I found him later in the den, arranging schoolbooks inside his backpack. "You are not in trouble," I said. He kept his eyes down. "I didn't touch it." "I know." He looked at me then, surprised enough to hurt. The following week, perfume my father had given me began disappearing. I smelled it in the downstairs bathroom after Dana left for church. I said nothing. Instead, I moved my father's watch, my grandmother's earrings, and the envelope containing our house documents into the fire safe in my locked office. Nathan noticed the new lock. "You think Dana is stealing?" he asked. "I think $60 disappeared, and I think she is using things without asking." He rubbed both hands over his face. "She's embarrassed, she has nothing right now." That doesn't answer what I said. "No, but it explains why everything feels strange." The sentence stayed with me because it was the first time I saw how his family converted facts into weather. Nothing was chosen. Things simply happened around Dana. Money disappeared because she was embarrassed. Bills went unpaid because life was hard. Boundaries became cruelty because children were involved. I wrote the missing cash and perfume in a small black notebook I carried for work. Date, amount, location, conversation. I did not call it evidence, not yet. My purse remained on a brass hook by the kitchen door. Every evening I hung it there and knew where my wallet would be the next morning. That habit made what happened possible. The first Friday in October, Nathan drove to Columbus for an overnight repair. After dinner, the children went to bed, Dana closed her door, and I checked the locks before going upstairs. At 2:47 a.m., someone unlocked my phone with my sleeping face. I did not know that until later. What woke me near 3 was a floorboard creaking below the bedroom. Our house had one stair that complained loudly, and another that whispered. This was the whispering one near the kitchen. I opened my eyes. A narrow stripe of hallway light rested beneath the bedroom door, then vanished. I listened. The refrigerator hummed. Pipes settled inside the wall. Somewhere downstairs, fabric brushed against wood. I thought Kyle was getting water. I almost called his name, but the house became quiet again, and I rolled toward Nathan's empty side of the bed. That small decision haunted me for weeks. Later, I understood that sleeping in my own home was not negligence. The person moving through the darkness owned the choice. My alarm sounded at 6:40. Before I could silence it, I saw 19 notifications. The first was from the card issuer, possible fraud detected. The second listed an airline charge for $4,860. Then came $2,300 at an electronics retailer. Then $415 for children's clothes. Then another clothing order, luggage, shoes, and a hotel deposit. I sat on the edge of the bed with my feet on the cold floor and added the amounts twice. $9,000. Exactly. My hands did not shake. That surprised me. Instead, everything inside me slowed down. I called the fraud number before brushing my teeth. The representative asked whether I had made the purchases. I said no. She asked whether anyone had permission to use the card. I said no. She asked whether the physical card was missing. I walked downstairs while speaking. The living room television glowed blue. Kyle and Tessa sat beneath a blanket watching cartoons. Dana stood at the stove, frying eggs in a pale pink robe, with a store tag tucked beneath one sleeve. My purse still hung from the brass hook. I opened it. The wallet was inside, so were my cards. But the platinum card in the outer slot faced backward. I always placed the magnetic strip toward the leather. Now the numbers faced out, and one corner was bent as if someone had shoved it back quickly in the dark. The representative was still speaking. "Ma'am, are you there?" "Yes," I said, looking at Dana. "I'm here." I carried the wallet into the kitchen and set it on the counter. Dana glanced at it, then at my face. Then she smiled. "Morning," she said. "Want eggs?" The fraud representative asked me to confirm my mailing address. I did. Dana turned the heat lower beneath the pan. The representative asked whether I recognized the passenger names on the airline booking. She read them slowly. Dana Caldwell. Kyle Caldwell. Tessa Caldwell. Dana stopped moving. I looked at the pink robe, the hidden tag, and the expensive white sneakers beside the back door. No, I said into the phone. I did not authorize those passengers. Dana's smile disappeared. The children were close enough to hear, so I thanked the representative, locked the card, requested written details, and ended the call. Then I waited until Kyle turned the television louder. Dana, I said quietly, we need to talk about what you did last night. Her eyes widened with practiced precision. What I did? $9,000 was charged to my card between 2:47 and 4:12. The airline tickets have your name and the children's names on them. For 1 second, I expected shame. What appeared instead was calculation. Oh my God, she whispered. You were hacked. I stared at her. It happens constantly, she continued. They use real names, so purchases look legitimate. The electronics order is scheduled for pickup under your phone number. Then they stole my information too. The clothing is being shipped here. Because this address is probably saved somewhere. She said each answer faster than the last, building a bridge while running across it. I opened the kitchen trash and lifted the coffee grounds with 2 fingers. Beneath them lay a folded airline confirmation. Dana's face hardened. I placed it on the counter between us. She looked toward the living room. You're frightening the kids. No, I said. I'm speaking quietly. Those are different things. Her mouth tightened. That was when the front door opened. Nathan stood there with his overnight bag, home 6 hours early. He looked at me, at Dana, and finally at the airline confirmation on the counter. What happened? He asked. Dana began crying before I answered. Not slowly, not naturally. The tears arrived all at once, as if someone had opened a valve. Sienna thinks I stole her card. Nathan's eyes moved to mine. I watched recognition arrive, followed immediately by fear. Not fear of what Dana had done, fear of what would happen when Frank found out. Nathan set his bag down without taking his eyes off Dana. What happened? He asked. I turned the airline confirmation toward him. $9,000 was charged to the Herald's card while I was asleep. The tickets are in Dana's name. The electronics order uses her phone number. The card was put back in my wallet backward. Dana pressed both hands to her face. I didn't know it was the paper's card, she said. The room stilled. It was the first honest sentence she had spoken. Nathan looked at her. You didn't know? Dana lowered her hands. She understood too late what she had admitted. I mean, I didn't know what card Sienna was talking about. I thought she meant her personal card. You thought she meant the card you took? I asked. I didn't take anything. Nathan closed his eyes. The children had gone quiet in the living room. Even the cartoon seemed suddenly too loud. Kyle stood first. He took Tessa by the hand and led her toward the den without being asked. That movement told me this was not the first time he had known when adults were about to turn dangerous. Nathan waited until their door closed. Then he said, Dana, tell me the truth. She looked at him with disbelief. You're taking her side? This is our house. I'm your sister, and she's my wife. Dana laughed once, sharp and wounded. 8 months, Nathan. You've known her 8 months. I've known what fraud looks like for 12 years, I said. The card issuer has the device information. The airline has the passenger names. The store has your pickup details. You always do that, Dana snapped. Do what? Talk like everyone's a criminal you're investigating. Only when someone steals $9,000 from my employer. Nathan flinched at the word employer. Dana saw it. Her voice softened. Nathan, I was going to fix it. He stared at her. So you did take it. She glanced toward the den, calculating whether the children could hear. I was borrowing it. At 3 in the morning? I asked. I couldn't sleep. With my card in your hand? Her face reddened. You have no idea what it feels like to tell your children no every day. No new shoes, no birthday trip, no normal life. They've watched everyone else go places while we sit here eating your leftovers. The accusation was so carefully shaped that for half a second it almost resembled pain instead of theft. You booked Orlando, Nathan said. It was for them. You bought 2 phones. One was for Kyle. His screen is cracked. And the white sneakers? I asked. She looked at the shoes near the door and said nothing. Nathan leaned against the counter as though the kitchen had tilted. Cancel it, he said. All of it. Now. I tried. The words came out small. I looked at her. When? After you came downstairs, you left the house? The electronics store wouldn't take the return. They said the order was frozen. The airline said the tickets were under review. You tried to return everything only after the fraud alert arrived. I was fixing it. You were removing evidence. Dana's eyes flashed. See? This is what I mean. You don't talk to people. You build cases. Nathan reached for his phone. Dana stepped toward him. Don't call Dad. He looked at her. That was when I knew Frank had handled this kind of emergency before. Nathan did call him. He walked onto the back porch and spoke in a low voice while Dana paced the kitchen. I remained beside the counter, watching the woman who had spent $9,000 as if speed could turn access into ownership. 22 minutes later, Frank Caldwell's truck stopped in front of our house. He entered without knocking, church jacket, gray hair combed back, jaw set. He had not come to learn what happened. He had come to decide what would be allowed to count. Dana moved toward him like a child crossing a dark room. Dad! Frank placed one hand on her shoulder, then looked at Nathan. Where are the kids? In the den, Nathan said. Good. He sat at our kitchen table and pointed to the chair opposite him. Sienna. It was not an invitation. I remained standing. Frank's eyes flicked to the airline confirmation. Nathan told me there was some confusion with a credit card. No confusion, I said. Dana took the Herald's corporate card from my purse and spent $9,000. Dana began. Dad, Frank raised one finger and silenced her. Then he looked at me with the patient disappointment of a teacher correcting a stubborn student. She would never do something like that. The sentence was absurd enough that I almost laughed. The tickets have her name on them. Names can be used. The purchase came from her phone. Phones get hacked. She admitted she thought it was my personal card. Frank's expression changed, not toward Dana but toward me. People say things under pressure. I did not pressure her. I asked what happened. You came downstairs waving bank alerts in front of children. I waited until the children left the room. You called the bank before calling Nathan. It was a stolen corporate card. He leaned back. There it was. Not concern. Offense. You brought outsiders into this before giving the family a chance to handle it. The bank detected the fraud. The outsiders were involved. Frank folded his hands over his stomach. Then you call them back and tell them there was a misunderstanding. There wasn't. You tell them Dana had permission. She didn't. She is your sister. She is my sister-in-law. The distinction hit the room like a dropped plate. Dana looked away. Nathan whispered, Sienna. I heard the warning in his voice, not because I was wrong, because Frank had heard me place a border around his daughter. Frank's face became calm in a way that frightened me more than anger. Family is not paperwork, he said. It is not banks and forms and strangers deciding who gets punished. Family solves its own problems. Then solve this one by asking Dana to admit what she did. I will speak to my daughter privately. She stole publicly enough to involve my employer. Frank ignored that. You cancel the dispute. I will repay whatever was spent. Dana will repay me. From what income? His eyes hardened. That is between me and her. No, the fraud is between the Herald, the bank, and whoever used the card. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. Herald? The Dayton Herald owns the card. Nathan had not explained that part clearly. I watched Frank recalculate. So this is company money. Yes. Then the company gets paid. That does not erase the unauthorized use. Money is the damage. No, the lie I would have to tell to cover it is also damage. Frank studied me for several seconds, then he stood. You reporters like making ordinary things sound important. And your daughter likes making other people's property sound communal. Dana gasped. Nathan stepped between us before Frank could answer. Everybody stop. He turned to his father. Dad, go home, please. Let me talk to Sienna. Frank looked at his son as if Nathan had spoken in a language he had never used before. You want me to leave my daughter here with someone threatening her? This is Sienna's house. The words were barely audible. But Frank heard them, so did Dana. For a moment, no one moved. Then Frank took Dana's elbow. Pack the children's things. Dana stared at Nathan. You're throwing us out? I didn't say that. You said this is her house. It is our house, Not mine. Nathan's face tightened. Dana, you took a card from her purse. I was trying to give my children one good memory. You could have asked. She would have said no. I answered before Nathan could. Yes. Dana looked at me as though my honesty proved something terrible about my character. Frank guided her toward the hallway. The children are coming with me, he said, until everyone calms down. I am calm, I said. That may be the problem. Within 15 minutes, Dana had packed 2 suitcases. Kyle carried his backpack. Tessa held the rabbit against her chest. At the door, Kyle stopped beside me. I'm sorry, he whispered. You did nothing wrong. His eyes filled anyway. Dana heard me and said, Don't drag my children into your performance. I looked at her. You used their names on stolen plane tickets. Frank opened the door before she could answer. They left in a line. Frank first, Dana behind him, then the children. Nathan stood at the window until the truck disappeared. The house felt enormous. On the kitchen counter, Dana's eggs had burned black in the pan. Nathan turned off the stove, carried the pan to the sink, and stood there with both hands braced against the counter. I need you to cancel the report, he said. I thought I had misheard him. What? Just until we understand what happens next. We understand what happened. No, we understand what she did. We don't know what the bank will do. That is not a reason to lie. I'm not asking you to lie. You are asking me to say an unauthorized purchase was authorized. I'm asking you to pause. The card is frozen. The fraud is documented. There is no pause button. He turned around. His face looked older than it had that morning. You don't know my father. I know he walked into my house and told me reality was negotiable. He panics around police, courts, banks, anything official. Why? Nathan looked toward the hallway where Dana's suitcases had been. I don't know, you do. His jaw tightened. I know enough to tell you this will break him. I felt something inside me pull taut. Dana stole $9,000, and you are worried about what my response will do to Frank. I'm worried about everybody. So am I. That is why I am not taking responsibility for a crime I did not commit. He looked down. The silence between us was not empty. It was crowded with every Sunday dinner, every time Dana had borrowed money, every time Frank had declared a subject closed, and Nathan had accepted the weather. At 8:15 Monday morning, Carol from the Herald's finance department called my desk. Sienna, she said, we have a fraud alert on your corporate card. Come downstairs now. I took my badge, my notebook, and every receipt I had printed. Carol sat beside our legal counsel in the conference room near payroll. A folder rested on the table. The bank had traced the transactions to my home internet connection. The airline had preserved the booking data. The electronics store had security video from Dana's attempted pickup. The physical card had never been reported missing because it had been returned to my wallet. Counsel folded his hands. We need a signed affidavit within 10 business days, he said. You will swear that the use was unauthorized. It was. Then understand the next part. Once you sign, the bank may refer the matter for criminal review. At $9,000, this is not treated as a family misunderstanding. Carol slid the form toward me. I looked at the blank signature line. For 12 years, signatures had belonged to sources, witnesses, officials, and people whose names turned private truth into public record. Now the line waited for mine. My phone vibrated. A message from Frank appeared. Do not sign anything. I will bring the money tonight. I turned the phone face down. Counsel watched me. Is someone pressuring you? Not yet, I said. But I knew Frank Caldwell. Pressure was not something he applied all at once. He built it slowly, like a wall around a person who believed she was standing in an open room. Frank arrived at 7:12 that evening carrying a leather folder and a cashier's check. He did not knock. Nathan had forgotten to lock the door after taking out the trash, and Frank entered as though our house had returned to its proper owner. I was at the kitchen table with the affidavit beside my notebook. Nathan stood at the counter, staring into a cup of coffee he had reheated twice without drinking. Frank placed the folder between us. $9,000, he said. The cashier's check was made payable to the Dayton Herald. Beneath it lay a typed statement on legal letterhead. I read the first paragraph, then the second. It declared that Dana Caldwell had used the corporate card with my permission to purchase travel and household items. It claimed that I had forgotten granting access, panicked when the alerts arrived, and mistakenly reported fraud. At the bottom waited a line for my signature. I looked up. Who wrote this? A lawyer. Which lawyer? A man from church. Does he know the statement is false? Frank sat down. He knows this is a family trying to correct a misunderstanding. No. He knows whatever version you paid him to write. Nathan said my name quietly. Frank tapped the check with one thick finger. The paper gets every cent, nobody loses a dollar. You sign, this ends. The bank already has transaction records. Banks close files when money is returned, not when the cardholder swears the use was unauthorized. Then do not swear that. He said it as simply as if he were asking me to choose a different dessert. I slid the statement back. I will not sign a lie. Frank's face remained calm, but the skin beneath his eyes tightened. You would rather put 2 children's mother in jail. I would rather tell the truth about what happened. You know exactly what happens when people like you put words on paper. People like me? Reporters, lawyers, officials, you turn mistakes into identities. One bad night, and suddenly that is who a person is forever. Dana planned purchases for more than an hour, booked a vacation, ordered electronics, and hid the confirmation beneath coffee grounds. That was not one accidental swipe. She was desperate. So was every person whose theft I have ever covered. Nathan set down his cup. Dad, maybe we need another option. Frank turned toward him. There is an option. Your wife is refusing it. The word wife sounded temporary in his mouth. I folded my hands over the affidavit. Why are you not asking Dana to take responsibility? I am. She will repay me. That means you take responsibility. She is my daughter. And Nathan is your son. Frank's gaze sharpened. What does that have to do with anything? I looked at Nathan. He was watching the floor. I do not know yet, I said, but I think it has everything to do with this. Frank stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. You have been in this family 8 months. Do not walk into our history and start naming things you do not understand. I am not naming your history. I am naming what happened in my kitchen. He gathered the check but left the statement. Keep it, he said. Read it when you are less emotional. I am not emotional. That is what worries me. He turned to Nathan. Sunday, 6 o'clock. Bring your wife. Then he left. The statement remained on the table like something alive. Nathan picked it up after several minutes. He thinks he is protecting her. He is asking me to risk my career and sign a false statement to a bank. I know. Do you? His eyes met mine. Yes. But he did not tear the paper. He folded it and placed it back in the leather folder. The calls began Tuesday. Aunt Lorraine called while I was driving to an interview. She was 81 and spoke with the soft authority of someone who had spent decades disguising commands as concern. Honey, Frank says there has been some confusion. There was theft. Well, that is a hard word. It is an accurate word. Dana has children. So do many people accused of crimes. Lorraine inhaled sharply. Families should not speak that way about each other. Should families take one another's credit cards? Silence. Then she said, I am praying you choose mercy. Nobody asked whether Dana had chosen mercy while standing beneath my purse at 3 in the morning. By Wednesday, Nathan's cousins were texting him. One said Frank had barely slept. Another said Dana was having panic attacks. A third reminded Nathan that Margaret would have been devastated to see the family divided. Every message treated the theft as a stone that had fallen from the sky. My response was the only human action in the story. At work, I signed an internal incident report and met with Ruth Okafor, my editor. Ruth was 61, silver-haired, and capable of making a city councilman confess simply by wading through his silence. She closed her office door. Tell me the version you have not told legal. I handed her my notebook. She read the dates, the missing cash, the perfume, the fraud timeline, and Frank's proposed statement. When she finished, she pushed the notebook back. He is not trying to prove she had permission, Ruth said. He is trying to make you responsible for the consequences of saying she did not. That seems to be the family position. Families are excellent at turning the person who names the fire into the person who burned the house. I looked through the glass wall at the newsroom. Reporters moved between desks, phones rang, copy editors argued over a headline. My signature is due next Monday. Then next Monday, sign whatever is true. It could send Dana into a felony process. Ruth leaned back. Did you buy the tickets? No. Did you take the card? No. Did you choose the amount? No. Then stop describing yourself as the person sending her anywhere. The words were clean, but they did not make the decision painless. That evening, I returned home to find Dana's children sitting on our porch. Kyle had his backpack between his shoes. Tessa held the rabbit under her chin. Nathan opened the door before I reached them. What happened? Dad dropped them off, he said. Where is Dana? Neither child answered. Kyle looked at the driveway. She went to talk to Grandpa. Nathan brought them inside. I called Dana. No answer. I called Frank. She needs time, he said. You left her children at my house without asking. They are family. That is not permission. You would rather they sit in the truck while their mother is upset? I would rather the adults in this family stop making choices and handing me the consequences. Frank's voice cooled. You said you cared about those children. I do. That is why I will not use them as bargaining chips. They are not bargaining chips. Then stop placing them in the middle every time I say no. He hung up. Dana arrived after 10. She smelled like wine and church perfume. She did not thank us for feeding the children or helping with homework. Instead, she stood in the hallway and said, Dad told me what happens if you sign. You have 20 minutes. The bank decides what happens. You know what you are doing. Yes, telling the truth. You think you are better than us because you have a job with your name printed under stories. No, I think my employer deserves not to lose $9,000. Dad offered the money. Your father's money does not rewrite your actions. Her mouth trembled. For a moment, she looked less like an entitled woman and more like someone standing at the edge of a world she had never been required to enter. I cannot have a felony, she whispered. I will never get hired. You should have considered that before using the card. I thought it was yours. The sentence escaped before she could stop it. Nathan was standing behind her. He heard. So if it had been Sienna's money, that would be different? He asked. Dana turned. I did not mean it that way. How did you mean it? She has savings. She has a house. She would have gotten the money back. From who? Dad. Nathan stared at her. There it was, the family economy in one word. Dad. Every debt had the same final account. Dana grabbed the children's coats and left without another sentence. That night, Nathan climbed into the attic. I heard boxes moving above the ceiling for nearly an hour. When he came down, dust covered his shirt, and his face looked pale. He carried a narrow cardboard box, marked Nathan, Private, in faded black marker. He set it on the dining table but did not open it. What is that? I asked. Nothing useful. Then why did you bring it down? He sat opposite the box. When I was 13, I delivered newspapers before school. I saved $211. I waited. Dana needed braces. Dad said he was short until payday. He borrowed my savings. Did he return it? Nathan looked at the box. No. He opened the lid. Inside lay a school ledger with careful columns, a pawn ticket for a guitar, 3 savings bond envelopes, and a photograph of Nathan at 15 holding a red fender beside Frank's truck. Dana wrecked Dad's car when she was 18, he said. No insurance coverage for her. He sold my guitar to pay the repair. Without asking? He said I was the one who could handle disappointment. The sentence landed harder than shouting. Nathan lifted one of the savings bond envelopes. My grandmother gave us each $500. Mine was cashed when I was 16. Dana needed a lawyer after she was caught shoplifting. Did you know? Not until years later. He spread the items across the table. Small papers, small amounts. A childhood divided into neat sacrifices. I thought being her brother meant helping, he said. Helping is chosen. He looked at me. I do not know if I ever chose any of it. For the first time since the fraud alert, I saw anger in him. Not loud anger. The dangerous kind that arrives after a person finally adds the numbers. On Thursday morning, Ruth called me into her office. A rumor had reached the Herald's business department. Someone was saying I had loaned Dana the corporate card for a family vacation and reported fraud only after we argued. Where did it come from? I asked. Ruth's expression was flat. Frank plays golf with a man who lunches with our publisher. My stomach tightened. He is attacking my job. He is attacking the part of your story that makes your signature believable. I looked at the affidavit inside my folder. Frank could not change the transaction records. He could not erase the store camera. He could not alter the airline booking. So he had chosen the only evidence he believed he could still damage: me. Ruth slid an email across her desk. The publisher had requested a review of my card access, expenses, and reimbursements. Routine was the word institutions used when they wanted Panic to wear a tie. I have nothing to hide, I said. I know, Ruth replied, but innocence requires records when somebody supplies a prettier story. My phone vibrated. Frank had sent a photograph. The $9,000 cashier's check rested on Margaret's china beside his lawyer's statement. 3 yellow tabs marked the signature lines. Behind them, my corner seat had been moved. A place card now stood beside Frank's chair. His message contained one sentence. Sunday at 6. Pastor Bill will help us close this with grace. I showed Ruth. She studied the photograph carefully, then looked at me. That is not dinner, she said. That is a courtroom where he chose the jury. By Friday morning, the rumor had acquired details nobody had witnessed. I had supposedly handed Dana the corporate card at Easter. I had supposedly told her to use it for the children whenever she needed. I had supposedly become angry only after she booked a better vacation than I could afford. At Easter, Dana had once forgotten her wallet at a gas station. I had paid $38 on my personal card while she stood beside the pump. Frank knew because he had been in the passenger seat. The publisher placed me on administrative review while finance audited 12 years of expenses. 2 reporters I had trained stopped talking when I entered the break room. Ruth found me standing beside the coffee machine, holding an empty cup. Go home, she said. I have a council record story due. You have not slept. I can work tired. You cannot defend your credibility by collapsing in public. Frank is winning. No, Ruth said. He is spending money and reputation faster than the facts can arrive. That is not the same as winning. It feels the same, only in the middle. She handed me a copy of the internal review notice. Read the last line. I did. No adverse conclusion has been reached. Routine processes feel like verdicts when someone has trained you to fear being misunderstood, she said. Do not confuse discomfort with guilt. At noon, the bank investigator called. Her name was Elena Alvarez, and her voice carried the calm precision of someone who had heard every possible version of unauthorized. She confirmed that the booking came from Dana's phone, her Apple ID, her saved airline profile, and our home network. The retailer had video of her attempting to collect the electronics at 9:14 the morning after the purchases. The store employee had asked for identification. Dana had presented her driver's license. Does the cardholder's statement still matter? I asked. It matters, Alvarez said, but the evidence does not disappear if a cardholder changes her account. What happens if I say she had permission? There was a pause. Are you saying she did? No. Then I cannot advise you to make a statement you believe is false. I understand. Ms. Myers, has anyone offered money or asked you to change the report? I looked at Frank's photograph on my phone. Yes. Preserve every message. I already have. Good. Before ending the call, she said, the bank will make its referral based on the entire file. You are not personally deciding a sentence. That evening, Nathan came home carrying groceries and a silence I recognized. He put milk in the refrigerator, arranged cans by height, and finally said, Dad called my supervisor. I turned from the sink. What did he say? That there was a family emergency, that you were unstable, that I might need time away. My hands went cold. Why would he contact your job? To prove he can reach it. He sat at the table and rubbed his thumb across an old scar on his palm. When I was 22, I moved to Cincinnati for an apprenticeship. Dad called the company after 3 weeks and told them my mother was sick. She had a sinus infection. He said family needed me. Did you come back? By Friday. And the apprenticeship. They replaced me. I stared at him. You never told me that. I did not think of it as something done to me. What did you think it was? Bad timing. The phrase sounded inherited. Nathan opened the cardboard box from the attic and placed the paper route ledger beside Frank's legal statement. Dad called again today. He said if you sign the affidavit, I should decide whether I am a Caldwell or your husband. I sat opposite him. What did you say? Nothing. I have spent my whole life surviving him by saying nothing until the weather passes, he said. I know that is not enough for you. It is not enough for you either. He looked down at the ledger. I am trying to understand who I am without his permission. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. At 2 in the morning, a soft knock woke us. Tessa stood in the hallway wearing pajamas and holding her rabbit. Dana had returned to collect a winter coat and brought the children because Frank was at a church meeting. Kyle was asleep downstairs. Tessa had heard our voices through the vent and come looking for water. I walked her to the kitchen. She watched me fill the glass. Are we still going to Florida? She asked. My chest tightened. I do not think so. Mom said Grandpa fixed it. Some things cannot be fixed by paying for them. She traced a crack in the counter with one finger. Is Mom in trouble because of us? No, I said immediately. Grown-ups are responsible for grown-up choices. You and Kyle did nothing wrong. Mom said she only wanted us to have something good. I believe she wanted that. Then why is everybody mad? Tessa was 9. Wanting something good does not make every way of getting it okay, I said. She considered that. Like cheating on a test? Yes. Even if you need a good grade? Especially then. She drank her water and went back upstairs. I remained in the kitchen after she left. The affidavit lay inside my purse, folded beside my father's fountain pen. Frank's statement sat in the leather folder on the table. One protected the truth and exposed Dana. The other protected Dana and exposed me. There was no paper that protected everyone. Saturday morning, Dana called. Her voice was stripped of performance. Can we meet? Where? The diner on Patterson. She was already in a booth, a cup of coffee untouched between her hands. I sat across from her. For several minutes, she stared through the window. Dad says you hate me. I do not. He says you want to destroy us. I want you to admit what you did. I told him I took the card. That surprised me. What did he say? He said I was confused. I almost smiled, but Dana looked exhausted. He will not let me confess, she said. Confession does not require permission. You do not understand him. I understand more every day. She wrapped both hands around the cup. When I was 19, I worked at a clothing store. I took cash from the register, $280. My boyfriend had left, and Kyle was sick, and I was behind on rent. Frank paid it back. Her eyes lifted. How do you know? Public records. The employer declined charges after restitution. Dana laughed without humor. Dad made me write a statement saying the register count was wrong. He said if I admitted it, I would lose Kyle. He said good mothers do not hand their children to the system. Did you believe him? I still do. Sometimes. She looked toward the parking lot. After that, every time something happened, Dad fixed it before I could find out how bad it was. Rent, tickets, the divorce lawyer. I stopped knowing where the floor was because he always moved it under me. You still chose my purse? I know. The words were nearly inaudible. Say it clearly. She looked at me. I took the card and spent $9,000. Yes, without permission. Yes. Why Orlando? I asked. Tessa had a school project about places she wanted to visit. She drew that castle. Kyle laughed at her and said people like us do not go there. I heard myself telling them we would. I wanted one promise to come true. You could have promised something you could provide. I know that now. No, you knew it then. Her eyes filled. I did not rescue her from the sentence. I thought Dad would cover it, she said. That is not the same as believing it was allowed. No. She pushed an envelope across the table. Inside was a handwritten statement admitting the theft, the purchases, and the attempt to return the electronics after the alert. She had signed and dated it. Dad does not know, she said. Why give this to me? Because he is telling everyone you gave me permission, and you did not. I read the statement twice. This may be used against you. I know. Did a lawyer advise you? No. Then keep a copy and speak to one before giving this to anyone else. You are helping me? I am refusing to become like your father. Dana began to cry quietly. I am scared, she said. You should be. That is cruel. No, fear is information. Your father has spent years stealing that information from you. She folded her arms over herself. What will you do tomorrow? Tell the truth. Will you sign? I will decide in the room. Somewhere between Tessa's question and Dana's statement, the decision had already settled. But I needed to make it in front of Frank for the record. When I returned home, Nathan was sitting on the floor beside the attic box. The ledger, pawn ticket, and savings bonds surrounded him. I handed him Dana's statement. He read it slowly. She admitted it. Yes, Dad will say you forced her. Probably. Do you want me beside you tomorrow? I want you to choose where you stand. His face tightened. That sounds like an ultimatum. It is a boundary. An ultimatum controls your decision. A boundary tells you what my decision will be. And what is your decision? I will not lie. I will not accept Frank's money. And I will not remain in a marriage where your family gets to punish me for telling the truth. Nathan looked at our wedding photograph on the shelf. I love you. I know. I love them too. I know that too. What if choosing you means losing everyone else? What if refusing to choose means losing yourself? Then he gathered every item and placed them in a new folder. On the front, he wrote one word, BRLOD. He carried the folder to the kitchen and placed it beside Frank's statement. I will be there, he said. Before we left, I stood in the kitchen and looked at the brass hook beside the door. My purse hung there, where it had been the night Dana reached it. For 5 weeks, everyone had treated that hook like the beginning of the disaster. It was not. The disaster had begun years earlier, in ledgers, pawn tickets, paid evictions, erased reports, and family prayers that confused silence with mercy. My purse had been the first place the pattern touched something Frank did not own. I slipped the strap over my shoulder and felt the 2 papers inside settle against my hip. One would preserve my seat at his table. The other would preserve my name. For the first time, the choice did not feel complicated. It only felt expensive, and I understood those were not the same thing. At 5:30, I dressed in a navy blazer and flat shoes. I tied my hair back the way I did before difficult interviews. Into my purse went the affidavit, Dana's handwritten confession, my father's fountain pen, and copies of every message Frank had sent. Nathan wore the charcoal suit from Margaret's funeral. Before leaving, he removed our spare house key from the ring near the door. That is Dad's, he said. He placed it in an envelope. Nathan held my hand at every red light. When we arrived, 11 cars lined the street. Frank had invited the entire family. Through the dining room window, I saw Pastor Bill seated beside Margaret's empty chair. The good china was arranged beneath the chandelier. A place card bearing my name stood directly beside Frank's seat. After 8 months at the corner, I had finally been invited to the center. The promotion had arrived with a signature line. The front door opened before Nathan could knock. Aunt Lorraine stood there in lavender. There you are. Her eyes moved from Nathan to me, then to the purse on my shoulder. Behind her, voices filled the dining room. Frank had invited cousins I had met only at weddings, 2 members of his church, Pastor Bill, and Dana's former husband Mark, who looked confused. This was not family dinner. It was an audience. Frank appeared from the hallway wearing Margaret's silver tie clip. He embraced Nathan, then turned to me. Sienna, he said warmly, daughter. The word landed. I had been Nathan's wife, the reporter, the new person beside the serving trays. Now, on the night Frank needed my signature, I had become his daughter. I smiled. Frank. His hand hovered as though he expected a hug. When I did not move, he gestured toward the dining room. Come sit. We have been waiting. My place card stood beside his. Dana sat across from me, pale and rigid. Kyle and Tessa were absent. I was grateful for that. Pastor Bill occupied Margaret's old chair. Nathan noticed too. His jaw tightened. Beside my plate rested the cashier's check, the legal statement, and a black pen across yellow tabs marked "Sign here." Frank had arranged the papers carefully. Nathan placed the envelope containing the spare house key beside his own plate. Frank glanced at it. What is that? Later, Nathan said. The answer surprised Frank enough that he let it pass. Pastor Bill called everyone to prayer, heads bowed. Lord, he began, protect this family from pride, from institutions that divide, and from the temptation to punish when mercy is available. I kept my eyes open. Across the table, Dana did the same. Pastor Bill continued, asking God to soften stubborn hearts and restore what anger had broken. He never mentioned theft. He never mentioned false statements. He never mentioned the woman whose employer had lost $9,000. When he finished, everyone said amen except us. Frank lifted the carving knife. Before we eat, I want to say a few words. He stood beneath the chandelier. The world is hard, he said. It takes good people and reduces them to mistakes. Out there, one bad decision can cost a person a job, a home, even her children. Dana stared at her plate. But family is different. Family sees the whole person. Family does not hand one of its own to strangers and call that justice. Frank looked directly at me. For 5 weeks, fear and confusion have controlled this house. Tonight, we end that. The money is here. Every dollar. The statement is here. Once Sienna signs, her company will be made whole, Dana will repay me, and the matter will be closed. A cousin murmured, "Thank God." Frank smiled. Then he delivered the sentence he had been saving. She would never steal from family. The room exhaled. I looked at Dana. Her hands were clenched beneath the table. Frank set down the knife and sat beside me. His voice softened. Sienna, I know you have felt like an outsider. That is our fault. Margaret would have welcomed you faster. She was better at those things than I am. He glanced toward the empty place where Pastor Bill sat. But that changes tonight. You sign, and we close the book. No more corner seat, no more formalities. You are my daughter, and this is your table. Aunt Lorraine wiped her eyes. Pastor Bill pushed the black pen toward me. There is strength in forgiveness, he said. I looked at the legal statement. It said Dana had permission. It said I had forgotten. It said the report had been a misunderstanding. 3 lies compressed into 1 page. Frank tapped the check. $9,000, he said. No victim. No loss. There is a victim, I replied. Frank's smile remained. Your company is being repaid. That is not the victim I meant. His expression changed by 1 degree. I opened my purse. Everyone leaned forward. I removed my father's fountain pen, the affidavit, Dana's handwritten confession, and the folder Nathan had labeled borrowed. Frank's eyes settled on Dana's statement. What is that? Something true, Dana whispered. Dad. He turned toward her. She looked terrified, but this time she did not look away. I wrote it, she said. Frank stared at her as though she had struck him. You were upset. I was honest. No, you were frightened. Sienna pressured you. She told me to speak to a lawyer. You do not understand what you signed. I understand. I took the card. A sound moved through the table. Not surprise. Recognition. They had all known. Frank rose. Dana, stop talking. She flinched automatically. Then Nathan opened the borrowed folder. He placed the paper route ledger on the table. What is that? Aunt Lorraine asked. My childhood, Nathan said. He laid down the pawn ticket, the savings bond envelopes, and the photograph of himself holding the red guitar. Frank's face drained. Nathan, put that away. No. It was 1 word. But I felt the room rearrange around it. Nathan opened the ledger to the final page. I saved $211 when I was 13. Dad took it for Dana's braces and wrote borrowed. I checked the ledger every month for a year. Frank's voice sharpened. You had food, a roof, everything you needed. That does not make my money yours. I was raising 2 children alone. You were raising 1 child to expect rescue and the other to provide it. Dana covered her mouth. Nathan continued. You sold my guitar after Dana damaged your truck. You cashed my savings bond for her shoplifting lawyer. You called my apprenticeship and brought me home because you could not stand a decision you had not approved. Frank gripped the back of his chair. I did what was necessary. For who? For this family. No, Nathan said. For the version of this family where Dana never faces a consequence and I never get to object. Pastor Bill lifted both hands. Perhaps this is becoming unproductive. It has been unproductive for 36 years, Nathan replied. I had never heard him speak to an elder that way. Neither had Frank. His face hardened into something almost unrecognizable. "You think this woman taught you courage?" he asked. "She has known you 8 months. She taught me a boundary can exist without hatred." Frank pointed at me. "She is tearing you away from your blood." Nathan placed the spare key envelope beside his father. "No, I am taking back access to my house." The silence that followed was so complete, I heard the refrigerator cycle on in the kitchen. Frank looked at the envelope, then at Nathan. "You changed the locks?" "Tomorrow." Frank sat slowly. For the first time, he looked old. I unfolded the affidavit and smoothed it against the tablecloth. "Before I sign anything," I said, "I need to say what this is." Frank turned toward me. "It is a choice," he said. "Family or pride?" "No. That is how you have framed every boundary anyone ever set against you." I looked around the table. In 1971, Frank watched deputies take his father away over a $40 bad check. His family lost their house, and he decided nobody he loved would ever face the law again. Aunt Lorraine lowered her fork. "How do you know that?" "Nathan told me." Frank's hands curled. "That story is private. So were the thefts you paid to erase." He stood again. I kept speaking. "You took one terrible childhood morning and built a family system around preventing it from happening again, but protection without truth became permission. Dana learned that if she crossed a line, you would move the line. Nathan learned that love meant losing quietly. Everyone else learned to call the silence mercy. That is enough." "No, this is the first time it has been enough." My voice remained calm, and that calmness seemed to frighten him. "Dana did not take my card because her children needed medicine. She booked a vacation. She ordered electronics. She returned the card to my purse and lied when I confronted her. Then you offered me money to swear she had permission. When I refused, you contacted my workplace and attacked my credibility." Frank looked toward Pastor Bill. "I made inquiries. You spread a false story. I protected my daughter. You tried to replace her consequences with mine." He leaned close enough for me to smell coffee on his breath. "If you sign that affidavit, you are choosing strangers over your husband's family." I looked at Nathan. He did not look away. Then I looked back at Frank. "The bank is not asking me whom I love. It is asking whether I gave permission." I uncapped my father's pen. Aunt Lorraine began crying. Pastor Bill said, "Sienna, consider the children." "I have." Dana's voice came quietly from across the table. "Let her sign." Frank turned on her. "You do not know what you are saying. I know exactly what I am saying. You will lose your job prospects. You may lose your children." Mark, her former husband, spoke for the first time. "No one is taking the children because she admits credit card fraud." Frank stared at him. Mark continued. "I did not know why you invited me. Now I do. You wanted another witness to pressure her." Dana looked at him, stunned. He shrugged. "I am angry with you for plenty, Dana. But your father has been telling you the court will steal your children since our divorce. It is not true." Frank's authority cracked visibly. He had built the evening around unanimous fear. Now the witnesses were becoming people. I signed the affidavit. My name moved across the paper in blue ink. Sienna Myers. The sound at the table was smaller than a gasp. It was the sound of 14 people realizing the ending had occurred without their permission. I dated the form and placed Dana's statement behind it. Then I slid the cashier's check toward Frank. "The Herald cannot accept private payment in exchange for a false report." Frank did not touch it. His face had gone gray. "You were never family," he said. The words broke in the middle. For 8 months, I had feared hearing them. Now they sounded like a door unlocking. I capped my father's pen. "You are right," I said. "Family was never what you offered. You offered membership in a system, and the dues were silence." I stood. Frank's hand closed around the cashier's check. "Sit down." "No, you do not walk out before dinner." Nathan rose beside me. Frank looked at him desperately. "Nathan." My husband picked up the borrowed folder and the spare key envelope. "I am getting my wife's coat." Frank's face collapsed, not because I was leaving, but because Nathan was. Chairs scraped. Lorraine called his name. Pastor Bill began talking about reconciliation. Dana remained seated, crying silently, but when I passed her chair, she reached out and caught my wrist. "I am sorry," she said. The words were quiet and late, but they were hers. I placed my hand over hers once. "Tell the investigator." Then Nathan and I walked through the living room, past framed photographs that told the Caldwell history without showing what it had cost. At the front door, Nathan removed Frank's spare key from the envelope and set it on the hall table. Outside, cold rain had begun. We reached the car before Frank came onto the porch. "Nathan," he shouted. My husband stopped but did not turn. "If you leave with her, do not come back." Nathan stood in the rain for several seconds, then he opened my door. "That is the first clear boundary you have ever given me," he said. "I will respect it." We drove away while Frank remained beneath the porch light, holding $9,000 that could no longer purchase the ending he wanted. The rain followed us home in a thin silver curtain. Nathan parked in the driveway but did not turn off the engine. His hands remained on the steering wheel, and the dashboard light made him look younger, almost like the boy in the photograph holding the red guitar. "I thought leaving would feel like betrayal," he said. "How does it feel?" "Like breathing after holding it too long." Inside, we changed the locks before midnight. On Monday morning, I signed the final bank documents in Ruth's office. Dana's handwritten confession went to Alvarez through counsel. The Herald completed its audit and found no misuse on my part. 2 weeks later, the publisher called me in, apologized without using the word apology, and returned my access. Ruth framed the clearance letter and hung it above the newsroom coffee machine. "For anyone who enjoys rumors," she said. The bank referred Dana's file to the Montgomery County prosecutor. Because it was her first filed offense, because she confessed, and because no one wanted 2 children punished for an adult's choices, she received pretrial diversion instead of prison. She had to repay all $9,000, complete 100 hours of community service, attend financial counseling, and maintain employment. If she completed everything, the charge would be dismissed without a conviction. Frank called it humiliation. Dana called it the first bill with her own name on it. For 3 months, we heard almost nothing from the Caldwells. Sunday dinners continued without us. Christmas arrived with Frank's card returned unopened because Nathan had signed both our names. Nathan started therapy on Tuesday evenings. At first, he described it as maintenance, the way he talked about heating systems. By winter, he stopped joking about it. He kept the borrowed folder in his desk. One night, I asked why. "So I remember that generosity requires consent," he said. "Otherwise it is extraction wearing a family name." Dana found a job at a distribution warehouse. The work began before sunrise and left her feet aching, but she kept it. Frank offered to pay the restitution in full. She refused. That refusal cost her more than the money. He stopped calling every morning. He told relatives I had turned his daughter against him. He said Nathan and I had infected Dana with pride. Still, every month, a payment reached the bank. In March, Dana came to our house alone. She stood on the porch in a navy warehouse jacket, holding an envelope. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The last time she had crossed that threshold, she believed everything inside could become hers if she needed it badly enough. Now she waited to be invited. I opened the door wider. She shook her head. "I cannot stay." Inside the envelope was a copy of her latest restitution receipt and a personal check made out to me for $60. I looked at the amount. "The money from the bowl," she said. I had almost forgotten. I took it the second week I lived here. Kyle needed lunch money, and I had spent what I had on cigarettes. I blamed him without saying his name directly. Her eyes filled. "He heard me anyway." "Yes." I apologized to him. I studied the check. It was drawn from her account, funded by wages she had earned. "You do not owe me a performance," I said. "I know. That is why I came without Dad." She looked toward the brass hook visible beyond my shoulder. My purse hung there, unchanged. "I still do not understand why you did not hate me." "I hated what you did." "That is different?" "It has to be. Otherwise people become the worst thing they have done, and then consequences cannot teach anything." Dana nodded slowly. "Dad says you destroyed the family." "No, I stopped helping him hide the damage." She accepted that without argument. Before leaving, she said, "Tessa asks about you. She can visit whenever you are comfortable. So can Kyle?" "Especially Kyle." The children began coming every other Saturday. We cooked breakfast, watched movies, and never discussed the case unless they asked. Kyle eventually stopped checking whether adults believed him before finishing a sentence. Tessa's rabbit lost its second ear and became more loved for it. Frank never came. Once, I saw him across the sanctuary at a funeral. He looked at Nathan, then at me, and turned away before the service began. I felt no victory. Some systems do not collapse when confronted, they simply lose access to the people who finally close the door. A year after the theft, Dana completed diversion. The charge was dismissed. The bank was fully repaid. She kept her warehouse job and began taking evening classes in medical billing. The Herald promoted me to investigations editor. On my first day, Ruth left my father's fountain pen beside the new office key. Use both carefully, her note said. Nathan and I still disagree. We still carry histories into rooms where they do not belong. But now, when silence appears between us, we ask what it is protecting. Most nights, my purse hangs on the same brass hook by the kitchen door. I do not lock it away. The point was never to build a house no one could enter. It was to build one where access did not erase permission, where love did not require a false signature, and where peace was not purchased by the quietest person at the table. That is what $9,000 bought us. Not revenge, not a perfect family, and not an apology large enough to erase the night. It bought edges. It bought choices. It taught every Caldwell, including me, that mercy can open a door, but truth decides who receives the key. At 3 in the morning, our house is silent now. Not the silence of fear. The silence of people who know the doors are locked, the truth is safe, and nobody inside is expected to pay for belonging.